Hey friends, this is the second lesson for Unit 6, and we're going to do something a little bit different or weird, maybe. First thing, I have a little note, roots and fractions, because those of you that were in class, like in the building yesterday, I was talking about what to do when you're getting square roots and dealing with fractions, and said I would do something online here. So I'm going to talk about that first, then I'm going to talk about the unit circle. So firstly, let's say you have, so you're given an angle. You can look at it this way. So there's your kind of coordinate plane. It's crooked. Okay, so this is your origin, meaning it's like 0 and 0, right? So this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. And let's say, I'll do it in a different color. You're given some angle, whatever, I don't care what the angle is. That angle is theta. Theta, it should look like this. Your angle is theta, and you are told, is this crooked? And you are told that there's a point here, point P, and I'm just making up numbers. Let's say it's 3 and 5. What that means is the x value is 3, and the y value is 5. So it's 3 kind of wide and then 5 high. All right. So now the thing is, if you're doing primary trig ratios, you'll need to solve for the hypotenuse. Okay, so remember, where should I write this? No, I'll just keep writing. So sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. Cos of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. Sine cos tan of theta is opposite over adjacent. We have the adjacent side. We have the opposite side. We don't have the hypotenuse. In the textbook, it refers to this as r, as the radius. It's talking about kind of a unit circle. I'll talk about that in a second. But we need to solve for that, regardless of what you want to call it. I'm going to call it the hypotenuse because I like that. So to get the hypotenuse, that's c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So c squared equals a or b, doesn't matter which is which, 3 and 5, I don't care. 3 squared plus 5 squared is 9 plus 25, which is 34. That's what c squared equals. So you take the root, c equals the root of 34. That is an exact answer. If you punch that into your calculator, 34 root, I get 5.8, blah, 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 blah. Notice it's not repeating, it's not ending. So keep it this way. This is way cleaner, unless you're explicitly told different. Now the thing is, when we start putting it in over here, the h is on the bottom over here. So just to reinforce these primary trig ratios, opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite side is 5. The hypotenuse is the root of 34. I didn't give myself very much room here. Adjacent side is 3 over the root of 34. Opposite over adjacent, that's just 5 over 3. Okay, now the thing is, I don't like these, the roots on the bottom. That's not good form, so we need to change that. Anytime you have a root on the bottom, it's way easier than you think. So let's take 5 over root 34. 5 over root 34. If we want the root on top, all we need to do is multiply the top and the bottom by that root. So it becomes 5 root 34 over the root of 34 times the root of 34, which is 34 squared, root of 34 squared, whatever. Those roots cancel, so it becomes 5 root 34 over 34. That's it. Notice it's 5 over root 34 becomes 5 root 34 over 34. That's it. 3 over root 34, same idea. Becomes 3 root 34 over root of 34 times the root of 34. Notice what we're doing to each of these is we're multiplying the top and the bottom by the same thing. Because the root of 34 over the root of 34, that equals 1. Okay, so we're multiplying these things by 1. We're not changing the numbers. We're not changing the values or anything like that. We just don't want the roots on the bottom. So this equals 3 root 34 over 34. Now, the only extra little step is if you can reduce this, 5 and 34. You can't. 3 and 34, you can't. If this was a 2, that you can reduce. Then it would be root 34 over 17. So reduce these if you can, but otherwise, please root signs on top. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to talk about today. We're actually not going to do a lesson today. We're going to do, well, kind of. You'll see. So this is important. But now, what's going to happen? I really don't want to lose my order here. Give me 1 sec. Let me order this. I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So I want to talk about the unit circle. Looks crazy, I know. Next year, you will need to memorize this. And it's way easier than you think. If you guys were in school, I would do a quiz where I give you a blank one and have you fill it out. Now, on this particular example, I'll send a link copy of this too, so you can print it out if you want. You don't need to worry about radians. That's where it shows pi, like pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. You don't need to worry about those. That's next year. Worry about degrees. Now the thing is, this is a unit circle has a radius of 1. Okay, unit circle has a radius of 1. And that's why, so at this point, the coordinates, like if this is the origin, this right here is 0 and 0. Okay, this is your x, y value. At the outside stretch of this, where as far as you can go, that point is 1 and 0. X equals 1, y equals 0. If we go right up here from the origin straight up, x is 0, y is 1. That is the point. That is a point on the y-axis on the unit circle. And it goes same. So x here, -1, 0. At the bottom, 0, -1. That's the x value. That's the y value. Now, the tricky part, and really I can tell you honestly it's not that tricky, is these three right here are the same repeated through here. It's just that when they're over here, the x values are negative. When they're over here, x and y is negative. When it's here, the y is negative. But what you need to remember are these ratios. Everything is either a half, root 2 over 2, or root 3 over 2. If you remember these three things, you will remember it all. I feel like I want something skinnier to point with. So at 30 degrees, this is a 30-degree angle. Okay, so it's like 30 degrees. This is a 30-degree angle. The long side is the x. The short side is the y. The long side is root 3 over 2. The short side is 1 over 2. This is the longest side. 3 over 2 is a bigger number than this, and it's a bigger number than this. It gets smaller as it goes. Root 3 over 2 is greater than root 2 over 2, which is greater than a half. So at 30 degrees, it's root 3 over 2 and a half. At 45 degrees, the y and the x are equal. They're both root 2 over 2. Remember, for each one of these, the radius is 1. The hypotenuse is 1. So if you wanted to solve these, if you decided, like if you're told you have a triangle, say this is 30 degrees, and you're told the hypotenuse is 1. You can solve for this opposite side. You can solve for this adjacent side. You would use sine. So sine of 30 equals the opposite side. So we'll just say x. Well, actually, I'll say y maybe because it's the y. Y, that's an unknown anyway. Y over 1. And the answer is the same as what is this? Oh yeah, it's going to be a half, because sine of 30, this is going to be a half. Over here, this is cos. Cos of 30 equals x over 1, because the hypotenuse is 1. Cos of 30 times 1 is going to be root 3 over 2. Your calculator, some of you, I think Gavin was saying, his calculator gives them these fractions. What is this, like 1.7 or something? 3 root divided by 2, so 0.8666. This is what you'll get. That's the same as root 3 over 2. That's what these numbers mean. Man, I hope this is making sense. It's tough when I can't hear you directly. So at this point, the radius is 1, the y value is a half, the x value, root 3 over 2. At 45 degrees, both sides are the same. The x, that distance, that length, root 2 over 2. The height, root 2 over 2. This angle, 60 degrees, is kind of like the opposite of 30 degrees. At 60 degrees, the x value is a half. The y value, that's the long one, root 3 over 2. It's the opposite to the 30-degree angle. What I want you to do, I'm going to also include this. You can print it out or you can hand draw this. Focus on memorizing. This is your lesson today. This is it. Focus on memorizing the first quadrant. Okay? Focus on memorizing the first quadrant. I'm going to send this to you. Ignore the 3. That's just to keep in order. I don't know if I should reprint a new one or just send this. Maybe I'll send this because it's got all this stuff on it. So I'll attach these two things with this video. Focus on memorizing this. Okay? That's your lesson, and it's important. Don't blow this off. You're going to have to use this. You're going to have to use information from this, and I'm not giving you these values. I will give you this, and you will have to know them. This is 1 and 0. This is 0 and 1. This is root 3 over 2 and a half. This is root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. This is a half and root 3 over 2. 30, 60, 90, 30, 45, 60, 90 degrees. It's all here, but you need to commit it to memory. That's all I'm going to say about that. Peace be with you. I sound angry. I'm not angry. I have love in my heart.